The New Forest, Hampshire, slumbered under the August sun. It was the second day of the month in the year 1100. King William II of England, known widely as William Rufus due to his ruddy complexion, was hunting. This was a favourite pastime of Norman kings. The forest was vast, a royal domain carved out by his father, William the Conqueror. It was a place of sport, but also a place of danger. Wild boar and stag roamed its ancient paths. Today, however, the deadliest creature in the forest was not an animal. It was perhaps a man with a deadly aim and a hidden motive. Suddenly the tranquility was shattered. A cry went up. An arrow had flown, not into a deer but into the king himself. William Rufus lay dead, a single shaft piercing his chest. The King of England, a formidable warrior and a controversial ruler, was no more. His hunting party, moments before full of life and anticipation, scattered in panic. Some fled the scene immediately. This was not how a royal hunt was supposed to end. The air grew thick with fear and uncertainty. What had truly happened in the depths of the New Forest on that fateful summer's day? The news of the king's death would spread like wildfire. It would send shockwaves across England and Normandy. Rufus was a king who had made many enemies. His reign was marked by ruthlessness and a disdain for convention. He had clashed with the church, he had squeezed his barons for money, he had even quarrelled with his own brothers. Now his sudden demise opened up a dangerous power vacuum. The question on everyone's lips was simple. Was this a tragic accident, or was it something far more sinister, a carefully planned assassination? The scene in the forest was one of chaos and abandonment. According to some accounts, the king's body was left where it fell for a time. Only a few loyal followers, or perhaps those with less to fear, remained. Eventually, a humble charcoal burner named Purkis would transport the royal corpse. He placed it on his simple cart. The journey to Winchester Cathedral, the traditional burial place of West Saxon kings, would be a grim one. The blood of the Red King stained the forest floor, and the mystery of his death began to take root, a mystery that endures to this very day. William Rufus was born around 1056. He was the third son of William the Conqueror and Matilda of Flanders. He was not his father's eldest son. That was Robert Curthose, Duke of Normandy, but the Conqueror, on his deathbed in 1087, chose Rufus to inherit England. This decision set the stage for future conflict. Rufus was a man of striking appearance. He had a ruddy, florid complexion, giving him his nickname. He was stocky, strong, and possessed a fiery temper. He was every inch a warrior king, in the mould of his powerful father. His personality was complex and often contradictory. He was known for his bravery in battle. He was a skilled military commander. He could also be generous to his soldiers and those he favoured. However, he was equally known for his arrogance and his sharp tongue. He had little time for diplomacy if force could achieve his aims. He was said to be irreligious, even blasphemous by the standards of the time. This deeply offended the churchmen who chronicled his reign. Their writings paint a picture of a king who mocked God and plundered church lands with impunity. Rufus was a king who enjoyed the trappings of power. He loved hunting, feasting, and extravagant display. His court was known for its lavishness and also for its rather scandalous behavior. He never married and had no legitimate children. This was unusual for a king of his era. It led to much speculation and condemnation from clerical writers. They often hinted at immoral practices within his inner circle. Whether these accusations were entirely true or exaggerated by his enemies is hard to say, but they contributed to his controversial reputation. Despite the criticisms, Rufus was an effective, if harsh, ruler. He maintained order in England. He defended his kingdom's borders successfully. He even expanded his influence in Wales and Scotland. He was a formidable figure, respected and feared in equal measure. He understood the importance of a full treasury. He was adept at raising funds, often through means that his barons and the church found oppressive. His strong hand kept England relatively stable, but it also bred resentment. This resentment would become a crucial factor when considering the circumstances of his death. William Rufus' relationship with the church was notoriously poor. This was a significant source of tension throughout his 13-year reign. He frequently left bishoprics and abbacies vacant for long periods. This allowed him to collect their revenues for the royal coffers. This practice was seen as simony, a grave sin. Anselm, the scholarly Archbishop of Canterbury, became his most prominent ecclesiastical opponent. Their disputes were bitter and prolonged. Anselm eventually went into exile, unable to reconcile his principles with the king's demands. Rufus seemed to relish these confrontations, showing little respect for religious authority. The Norman barons, the powerful landholders of England, also had a strained relationship with the king. While they had benefited from the conquest, they found Rufus to be a demanding overlord. He extracted heavy taxes and feudal dues. He enforced royal forest law with severity. This restricted their hunting rights and access to resources. There were several baronial rebellions during his reign. Rufus suppressed these with his customary ruthlessness. He was not a king who tolerated dissent easily. His firm grip maintained control, but it also created a climate of fear and simmering discontent among the nobility. Family affairs were no less complicated for William Rufus. His elder brother, Robert Curthose, Duke of Normandy, was a constant rival. Robert was seen by some as the rightful heir to all their father's domains. He was more amiable than Rufus, but also less effective as a ruler. The two brothers clashed repeatedly. Rufus even invaded Normandy on several occasions. Their younger brother Henry was also a key player. Henry was landless for a time, but he was intelligent and ambitious. He carefully navigated the complex relationship between his elder siblings, biding his time. The political landscape of England and Normandy was therefore a treacherous one. Rufus had to contend with external threats from France and Scotland. He also faced internal challenges from resentful churchmen and powerful barons. His own family was a source of instability. These ongoing conflicts created a long list of potential enemies. Many individuals and groups stood to gain from his removal. This backdrop of animosity and ambition is essential. It provides the context for understanding why the arrow that struck him in the New Forest might not have been an accident at all. The days leading up to August 2nd, 1100, were, according to some chroniclers, filled with dark omens. Medieval writers often looked for supernatural signs to explain momentous events. The death of a king was certainly momentous. One story tells of a monk who had a terrifying dream. He dreamt that the king entered a church full of arrogance. He then supposedly bit into a crucifix, tearing at the figure of Christ. The crucifix then allegedly struck the king, causing him to fall with flames and blood issuing from his mouth. Such vivid imagery was meant to portray Rufus as a doomed man. Another tale recounts that the king himself had a disturbing dream the night before his death. He dreamt that he was bled by a surgeon. The stream of blood was so copious that it reached up to the heavens, obscuring the daylight. Upon waking, he was said to be deeply troubled. He reportedly called for lights and ordered his attendants to stay with him. He did not sleep for the rest of the night. Whether these stories are true or later embellishments to add drama to the event is debatable. However, they reflect the contemporary belief that great events cast their shadows before them. On the morning of the hunt, further warnings were supposedly given. An unnamed monk reportedly approached the king. He relayed a premonition of the king's impending doom. Rufus, in his typical fashion, is said to have scoffed at the warning. He allegedly declared that the monk was merely trying to extract money from him. He supposedly joked that the monk probably thought he was a sensible man for relaying such dreams. He then ordered the hunt to proceed as planned. His characteristic bravado, or perhaps recklessness, seemed to be on full display that day. Despite these alleged premonitions, the hunting party assembled. It included many prominent nobles. Among them was the king's younger brother, Henry. Also present was Walter Tyrrell, a French nobleman known for his skill as an archer. The atmosphere was likely one of excitement, a typical royal pursuit. The king loved the chase. He was an experienced hunter. The New Forest was familiar territory. Yet beneath the surface of this routine royal activity, fate, or perhaps a carefully laid plan, was about to unfold. The stage was set for a tragedy that would change the course of English history. Section 5. An Arrow's Flight, the official account. The most widely accepted contemporary account of William Rufus's death comes from chroniclers like William of Malmesbury. According to this version, the royal hunting party spread out through the forest. They were in pursuit of stags. The king and Walter Tyrrell found themselves relatively close to one another. They were positioned, waiting for game to be driven towards them. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, a stag suddenly appeared. Both men, it is said, took aim, or perhaps only one did in the heat of the moment. The official narrative states that Walter Tyrrell loosed an arrow at the stag. However, the arrow either missed its intended target or, more dramatically, glanced off the stag's back. It then struck King William Rufus in the chest. The king, mortally wounded, fell from his horse without uttering a word. He supposedly tried to pull the shaft from his body, but succeeded only in breaking it. The arrowhead remained lodged deep within him. Death was swift. This version paints the event as a tragic accident, a misadventure of the hunt. Upon realizing what had happened, Walter Tyrrell panicked. He saw the king fall. He knew the implications. Killing a king, even accidentally, was a perilous situation. Without hesitation, Tyrrell reportedly leapt onto his horse and fled the scene. He rode hard for the coast. He eventually crossed the English Channel to France. His rapid departure certainly looked suspicious. It could be interpreted as the action of a guilty man. Or it could be seen as the desperate act of someone fearing unjust retribution for a terrible accident. His flight added another layer of complexity to the event. The king's body, as mentioned, was initially abandoned by many of his terrified companions. His younger brother, Henry, was notably quick to leave the forest. He did not head for Winchester to mourn his brother. Instead, he rode directly to seize the royal treasury. This haste would later fuel much speculation. The official account, therefore, while simple on the surface, left many questions unanswered. It portrayed a chaotic scene, a sudden accident, and a panicked flight. But for many, this explanation felt too convenient, too neat for such a controversial king. Section 6. Whispers of Murder, the Shadow of Doubt. Almost immediately after King William Rufus's death, doubts began to surface about the official story. The hunting accident explanation seemed plausible on one level. Such accidents did happen. However, Rufus was a king with a multitude of enemies. The idea that his death might have been orchestrated quickly took hold. The speed with which events unfolded after his demise only added to these suspicions. Was Walter Tyrrell truly the unfortunate agent of an accident? Or was he a deliberately chosen assassin, or perhaps even a scapegoat for a deeper conspiracy? Several alternative theories emerged, suggesting murder. One theory posits that Walter Tyrrell was indeed the killer, but that he acted deliberately. His motives in this scenario are unclear. Perhaps he harbored a personal grievance against the king, or maybe he was acting on behalf of others who wished Rufus dead. Tyrrell himself, years later from exile, swore an oath that he had not been in the same part of the forest as the king on that day. He also claimed he had not even seen the king at all on the day of the hunt. This denial, if true, completely undermines the official account of his accidental shot. Another line of thought suggests a wider conspiracy involving disgruntled barons. Rufus had certainly alienated many powerful nobles. His financial exactions and his autocratic style of rule bred resentment. A collective of barons might have decided that removing the king was the only way to protect their own interests. In this scenario, Walter Tyrrell could have been their chosen instrument, or perhaps one of several archers involved. The chaos of the hunt would have provided excellent cover for such a plot. Identifying a single ringleader among the barons, however, is difficult from this historical distance. The involvement of the church has also been speculated upon, though perhaps less convincingly as direct orchestrators. While churchmen certainly disapproved of Rufus's irreligious behavior and his plundering of church resources, instigating regicide was a dangerous game. However, some chroniclers, writing with the benefit of hindsight and clear dislike for Rufus, certainly seem to view his death as a form of divine justice. Their accounts sometimes subtly hint that his demise was no great loss, and perhaps even a blessing. This moral condemnation, while not direct evidence of a plot, contributed to the atmosphere of suspicion surrounding his end. Section 7. Brother Henry, opportunity knocks loudly. The figure who benefited most directly and immediately from William Rufus's death was his younger brother Henry. This fact alone makes Henry a prime suspect in many assassination theories. Henry was present in the New Forest on that fateful day, yet his actions immediately following his brother's demise were remarkably swift and purposeful. Instead of attending to the fallen king or ensuring a proper investigation, Henry made a beeline for Winchester. Winchester was home to the royal treasury. His priority was clear: secure the money, and with it, the means to claim the throne. Within 3 days of Rufus's death, Henry had himself crowned King Henry I at Westminster Abbey. This was an astonishingly rapid succession. It bypassed the claims of his elder brother, Robert Curthose, Duke of Normandy. Robert was conveniently away on the First Crusade at the time. Had Robert been in Normandy, or England, Henry's path to the throne would have been far more difficult. The timing of Rufus's death, therefore, could not have been more opportune for Henry. It seemed almost too perfect to be mere coincidence. This has led many historians to scrutinize Henry's movements and motives very closely. There is no direct, irrefutable evidence linking Henry to a plot to kill his brother. No smoking gun, or rather smoking bow, exists. However, the circumstantial evidence is compelling. Henry was ambitious, he was intelligent and known for his political acumen. He had previously been in conflict with Rufus. He knew that Robert Curthose was the primary heir. Removing Rufus while Robert was absent presented a unique window of opportunity. Some historians argue that Henry, if not the direct instigator, was at least aware of a plot and ready to capitalize on it. His swift actions suggest a degree of preparedness. Furthermore, Walter Tyrrell, the man officially blamed for the accidental shooting, was married to a daughter of Richard de Clare. The de Clare family were powerful Norman nobles. They quickly became strong supporters of Henry I after he seized the throne. This connection has led to speculation that the de Clares might have been involved in the plot, perhaps ensuring Tyrrell's safe escape. While this is speculative, it adds another intriguing layer to the theory of a well-orchestrated assassination designed to place Henry on the throne. The speed of his consolidation of power certainly suggests a man who knew what he wanted and how to get it. Section 8. The crown seized, a kingdom transformed. The death of William Rufus, whether by accident or design, had profound and immediate consequences for England. With Henry seizing the throne as Henry I, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Henry was a different kind of ruler from his fiery, martial brother. He was more scholarly, more calculating, and more adept at administration. He understood the need for a more stable and cooperative relationship with the barons and the church. One of his first acts was to issue the Charter of Liberties in 1100. This charter promised to redress many of the grievances that had arisen under Rufus's rule. The Charter of Liberties aimed to limit the king's power in certain areas. It promised to end the abusive collection of revenues from vacant church sees. It pledged to respect the customary rights of the barons regarding inheritance and marriage. While Henry did not always adhere strictly to its terms, the charter was a significant symbolic gesture. It signaled a move away from Rufus's more arbitrary style of kingship. It laid some of the groundwork for later constitutional developments, including Magna Carta. Henry sought to portray himself as a just and lawful king, in contrast to his predecessor. The change in leadership also impacted England's relationship with Normandy. Robert Curthose eventually returned from the crusade. He was, understandably, furious to find his younger brother on the English throne. This led to inevitable conflict. Henry I ultimately defeated Robert at the Battle of Tinchebray in 1106. He imprisoned his elder brother for the rest of his long life. England and Normandy were once again united under a single ruler, but this time it was Henry, not Robert or Rufus. Henry's decisive actions consolidated his power and brought a measure of stability after years of fraternal strife. Therefore, William Rufus's death was not just the end of one king's life, it was a pivotal moment. It ushered in a new era for the Anglo-Norman realm. Henry I's long reign from 1100 to 1135 would be characterized by administrative reforms, the strengthening of royal justice, and relative peace within England. While he could be just as ruthless as Rufus when necessary, his methods were often more subtle and his long-term vision more strategic. The arrow that felled Rufus in the New Forest, intentionally or not, redirected the course of English history onto a new path, one shaped by the cunning and capabilities of Henry I. Section 9. The Unsolved Mystery, Why Rufus Still Haunts Us. More than 9 centuries have passed since William Rufus met his untimely end in the New Forest, yet the mystery surrounding his death continues to captivate historians, writers, and the public alike. The ambiguity of the event, poised precariously between a simple hunting mishap and a complex assassination plot, provides fertile ground for speculation and debate. Was it the stray arrow of a careless friend? Or was it the carefully aimed shot of a conspirator acting on behalf of powerful interests, perhaps even the king's own ambitious brother? The lack of definitive proof allows the enigma to endure. The fascination also stems from William Rufus himself. He was a larger-than-life character. He was a flamboyant, irreligious, and formidable ruler who defied the conventions of his time. Such figures often loom large in historical memory. His controversial reign, marked by conflict with the church and his barons, created a compelling narrative backdrop. The violent end of such a contentious king naturally invites questions about who might have wished him harm. The dramatic scene, a king struck down in the royal hunting grounds, possesses an almost theatrical quality that appeals to our storytelling instincts. Furthermore, the consequences of his death were so significant. It directly led to the accession of Henry I, a king who profoundly shaped English governance and law. The what-if questions are tantalizing. What if Rufus had lived? How would his continued reign have altered the development of the English monarchy and its relationship with the church and nobility? Would Robert Curthose eventually have claimed the English throne? These counterfactual ponderings add to the allure of the mystery. The death of Rufus was a clear turning point, and such pivotal moments always attract intense scrutiny. Ultimately, the mystery of William Rufus's death remains unsolved because the historical sources are themselves ambiguous and often biased. The chroniclers of the time had their own agendas. They wrote from particular perspectives, often hostile to Rufus. The key witnesses, like Walter Tyrrell, either fled or had strong reasons to obscure the truth. Without new archaeological evidence or undiscovered contemporary accounts, a definitive answer is unlikely to emerge, and so the Red King's death will continue to be a shadowy tale, a historical whodunit that invites each new generation to examine the clues and draw their own conclusions about that fateful August day in 1100.